Being a network device, it's important to know how to configure the network settings for your Kairos server. In addition to that, you'll also need valuable PTP information input to the server to enable those 2110 flows to show up and to send with the proper timing. To enter that information, we simply need to jump down to our system settings. Within our system settings tab, we see common network settings. It's important to note before you change any of these settings, the Kairos will ask you to reboot as soon as you make a change. So let's say you needed to change LAN 2 or LAN 1. These are going to be your control ports. Make sure that when you make a change here, it's noted because there is no DHCP available in Kairos. Everything is static, and if you lose this IP information, you're going to have to go back through an IP recovery process, and it's going to take you a little bit of time. So please note all IP addresses before making a change. To change any of these IP addresses, simply jump to the box, type in the new IP. Once you click away, it'll prompt you for that reboot. Everything is an auto save in this menu, so be careful when you're changing your IP settings. All of your compressed streams and all of your control is happening on LAN 1 and 2. So it's a dual NIC box for control and compressed streams. Below that, we have our QSFP 1 and 2. This is where your 2110 flows are going to enter and exit the box. So QSFP 1 is your primary NIC. This is for the primary flows coming in. If you have a redundant setup, a -7 redundant setup, that's where your secondary QSFP2 is going to come in. So make sure you enable the secondary QSFP2 to enable those -7 redundant flows. If you are using a Kairos core and not using any 2110 interface and you're only using baseband inputs or compressed streams, it's the best practice to turn off these NICs so they're not using any resources. There's no reason to have QSFP1 enabled if you are not using it. In addition to making changes here for your network settings, we also need to make sure that our PTP is properly configured. In our PTP settings here, you'll see, of course, the domain that you need to manually enter for the PTP clock, and then what interface to look for that PTP on. So for Kairos, it can come down any of your network interfaces. You just need to make that selection here. Mode, generally speaking, you want to stay in follower only so that you can be a follower of your lead clock. And then announce interval, timeout, sync interval, all of these settings will come from your leader clock. So you want to make sure to match those settings here. You do have some presets configured as well here, so a single touch, single click can recall these presets. However, you want to make sure that your PTP settings are set up to match your leader clock. Once you have these settings changed or set properly, as I mentioned on the common network settings, PTP settings will also prompt you for a reboot. Because Kairos is a 2110 system, PTP is critical for its operation, so anytime that there's a change here, it will prompt you for a reboot. The last two items here on this menu are the Grandmaster Clock ID and the status. We want Kairos to be locked as a follower, and this ID should match your leader or master clock for your network configuration. So now that we see that our ID is correct and we're in follower mode, we know that PTP is good to go. Because our core is a piece of network equipment, you can have different touch points and different control points across your network. Make sure that your IP is configured correctly to enable that control and simplify your production.